You're listening to the Afro Chi Podcast, a show for my fellow Black female energy healers and the everyday woman who wants to heal her energy in a creative and holistic way. You'll hear from Black female healers who share their knowledge, gifts, and experiences and enlighten you on how to tap into your powerful Black energy to get the results you need to live an energetically free life. If you're ready to become unstuck, find freedom and peace energetically, stay tuned. I'm your host, Kiera Flipping. All right, guys, today I have the pleasure of speaking with the founder and owner of the Energetic Alchemist, here today to share with us her insight on Reiki, which is an energy healing technique. Our guest can be found on her own podcast, Reiki Radio, and online at theenergeticalchemist.com. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with none other than Yolanda of Reiki Radio. How are you?
Honey, after that intro, I'm like, whoa, honey, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to this. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited as well. So I had the pleasure of being on your podcast, which was actually like my very, very first podcast ever, to talk about how I integrate Reiki into my practice. And I've always told you, like, I'm a podcaster now, but I'm really not big on listening to other podcasts. I have my select few just because, I don't know, I'm a weirdo and I like listening to weird, non-conventional things. So when I found your podcast, Reiki Radio, I was like, oh my God, somebody is like podcasting about stuff that I want to listen to. So for a while, you were the only podcast I ever listened to, and I listened to every episode, and I just love your podcast. So when you invited me on, I was like total fangirl. I was like, oh my God, a celebrity invited me on her podcast. You are like Reiki. When I think of Reiki, I think of Yolanda. So when I started my podcast and I wanted to cover Reiki, I honestly could not think of anyone else but you. So it's just an honor to have you here today to share your insight on Reiki. So thank you.
Honey, I have to say, I mean, honestly, truly, that is such a huge compliment. And I have to tell you, one, it was a pleasure having you on the show because your work is just phenomenal. And it's beautiful to see the different ways that people are bringing Reiki into the world and how it's being shared. But I have to also say too, I'm so excited about the Afro Key podcast. Like, are you kidding me? I, have been doing my podcast since 2013, and it's been really challenging finding other women of color to interview in this arena around this work. So I'm so excited and proud to be able to be on this podcast. And I thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I just want to dive right into it. I know we've been throwing around the word Reiki. So for those listening that maybe they've heard the word, they've probably seen the word, and just now like, oh, that's how you say it. It's Reiki. That's how you say that word. Could you first start off with just explaining what is Reiki? Maybe a little history. Can you tell us just a little bit about what Reiki is?
Yes, absolutely. I have to say I love this question just because depending on who you ask, you're going to get different points of focus because it is such a beautiful technique that's used in a lot of different ways. But the word itself, it reminds me of like a compound word in our language. It's Japanese, and the first part, rei, means spirit, and the second part of the word ki means life force. So a lot of people loosely translate it as spiritually guided life force energy or life force energy, pointing to that the component of spirit, the spirit of one that exists within all living things. So what it is, a lot of people, I would say here in the West anyway, it has been used in a lot of ways to focus on our healing, energetic balancing, but helping to reduce physical pain. But what we found, which actually points back to its origin, is that it helps us to heal and balance on multiple levels. So
Mm-hmm.
not just in a physical way, but also emotionally, again,
Yeah.
energetically, really revealing to us all of these different layers and components of who and what we are, so
Mm-hmm.
that we can come back into a state of wholeness, of wellness, aliveness, really. I mean, we're so depleted from life and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that we go through, and we don't recognize how much it impacts us. So Reiki is a beautiful technique that's used to really help us to restore and rebalance on all levels of our
Mm-hmm.
being.
Hey Queens, isn't this such a great episode? Be sure to check out the Afro Chi Healers Directory, where you can find healers in your area offering similar services to the guests on today's podcast. If you are a healer, please be sure to join the directory so that Black women can locate your healing services and offerings. To join and view the directory, please visit afroqi.com. Okay, let's jump back into this episode.
Mm-hmm. Could you explain like what it looks like for a listener that may want to consider having a Reiki session? Like what would it look like for them? What can they expect like in the environment when they're coming in for an appointment?
Yeah. So I will say, first of all, Reiki can be performed in person and also remotely. I
Mm-hmm.
personally love doing remote or distant sessions,
Mm-hmm.
but in person, typically what will happen is you lie on a massage table, fully
Mm-hmm.
clothed. You keep your clothes on. It is not a massage. So
Mm-hmm.
you keep
Mm-hmm.
your clothes on, and hopefully the practitioner that you visit, they've created like a sacred space for relaxation. You may have, dim lighting, some massage music, these types of things. And
Mm-hmm.
then you will experience what's called laying of hands. So some practitioners will gently place their hands on the person, on the client,
Mm-hmm.
but some also practice with the hands just hovering above the body.
Okay.
And what's happening is the practitioner themselves, the best way to describe it is they are connecting to and their own life force and universal life force energy. Again, that source of life that animates
Mm-hmm.
all living things, right? So think of it as the practitioner has built their life force, has cultivated this life force energy to such a degree that when they connect with you in your space, it's like activating or triggering your own life force to then come back online and to
Mm-hmm.
rejuvenate your own energy, to get your own energy moving and flowing. And so you start to return and rebalance to your own state of wellness.
Nice.
And what people experience, quite frankly, I mean, a lot of people just fall right to sleep because it is very
Mm-hmm.
relaxing.
Yep.
But
I
there are
always say
some,
Reiki naps are the best naps.
oh, they are. They absolutely are. And, it's a beautiful thing because a lot of times we don't get that deep state of rest
Mm-hmm.
that we need. But a lot of people will also experience feeling the sensation of energy moving through their system, and they may see colors, they may have thoughts start to come to the surface. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different
Yeah.
ways it's experienced, but overall, it's very relaxing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that is true that a lot of people, they have different experiences. And even
Right.
if you come for a second or third or however many other Reiki appointments, each experience may be different for you.
Yes.
So I always hear clients say, wow, that I didn't experience this last time, but I felt this time. So even each time may be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you speak to us a little bit specifically for the Black women who are listening? Could you offer them anything just specifically to them of why it's important for us Black women to engage in Reiki?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say this honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize why it was so significant to me and as a Black woman until I got kind of deep into the practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I will say is, I came into Reiki just as a way to alleviate stress. I worked in finance, I went through a big layoff, and I was stressed out.
Yeah.
And so, Reiki was recommended to me. And because I had no idea what it was, I Googled it, sounded
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and I ended up taking a class instead of having a session.
Having a session. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I started Reiki and learning how to meditate simultaneously.
Mm.
And I thought, again, it was just going to help me alleviate stress. But
Mm-hmm.
what actually happened was I started to reconnect with myself. And we hear that a lot, but it's like, to say something more, to make it more clear, as I became more aware of my own feelings, my own behaviors, where my behaviors even stemmed from. I started paying attention to how I was functioning and why. I also started to recognize how my behaviors were not only impacting me, but the world around me and how others responded to me. So as I kept going through the layers of practice, and this is why I do think it's huge for everyone, but Black women in a very specific way, is it also started to bring into my awareness the impacts of how I was raised, being a Black woman here in this country, right? So it started to bring online what has been passed down to me through my lineage. Again, how I was raised in a lot of ways to suppress my emotions, my feelings. My mom was kind of like, there's nothing to cry about, suck it up and keep moving. You got stuff to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so what started to reveal itself was I didn't really know how to process emotion. I wasn't even really aware of the emotions I had,
Yeah.
And I just want to say, as a little side note to that, many years ago, I read a book called, I believe it was in this book, it was called The Great Migration, The Warmth of Other Suns. And this woman interviewed a lot of Black people who had migrated from the South and went into other parts of the country. And one of the people shared this story of how a lot of us were raised, how components of how we were raised were passed down from slavery, where our parents were or had to be very hard, or they had to be very hard on their children to protect them from being hurt by the slave masters and these things. So as you move through the generations, that toughness was still being passed on in different ways, right? So a lot of us are raised to be very strong, which is absolutely gorgeous and necessary, quite frankly, for the society we live in. But in a lot of ways, it's been to our detriment. So to bring it back around to Reiki, it started to crack open and reveal to me different aspects of myself that I didn't recognize, and I surely didn't recognize as wounds by any degree. So I think it is a beautiful, beautiful technique to help us return to just self-acknowledgement and self-love.
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight again, while a lot of people focus on it being this technique to alleviate, physical pain and these types of things,
It's deeper than that.
it's so much deeper than that. And it's unbelievable what you come to recognize that's available for your healing once you come into the practice.
Yeah. What would you say would be like some of the benefits for a Black woman coming into receiving Reiki services? What are some benefits, some outcomes she could potentially receive?
Yeah. Well, one, which would be like the most obvious, I think, is the state of relaxation.
Yeah.
Listen, we are busy. You know what I mean? Like, we have a lot going on. And, also a lot of pressure and stress to be successful in a lot of ways, juggling multiple things. Just, the list goes on and on. And so coming into Reiki, receiving Reiki services is just like this little space and time that you are giving to yourself to acknowledge you and giving yourself permission to slow down. Giving yourself permission to fill you back up, to put you first, even if it's for that hour. Like, you need that restoration. So I think it's really this beautiful, sacred space that we get to journey into for ourselves very intentionally, going in to know, like, this is just for me. It's just about me and nobody else.
Absolutely. And we don't carve out
No.
that time for ourselves to be selfish. Like, being selfish is looked at as so negative. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing for me. It's like, how dare you? How dare you go do something exclusively for you for an hour?
Yeah, but it goes back to, people say you can't give from an empty tank. And
So
you will
true.
burn all the way out. And again, that stress and that exhaustion will manifest itself through your behaviors. And then you're going to snap at your children. You're going to snap at your partner. You're going to, you know what I'm saying? Like everything is going to aggravate you and annoy you unless you give yourself that time to make you a priority and really work on healing you. Period.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about Reiki. You are healing you.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. I know a lot of clients always ask, like, well, how many sessions of these am I going to need? Like, how many times do I need to come in? Like, what would you say to someone wondering that?
Yeah. So honestly, I think it depends on what is going on for the person because people come in for different reasons. A lot of people come in for the physical component. I have clients who come in because, maybe they were in a car accident or they have back problems or these types of things. Then there are people who come in just for the emotional healing component of like self-connection, regaining that self-love and this and that. But for anyone who's new to this, I recommend that you come pretty frequently, honestly. I mean, I would say come a couple of times a week initially, just so that you can support that ongoing flow of movement, of reconnecting to yourself. And as you start to strengthen your own life force energy and you start feeling more strong, more whole, more complete, then it may, taper off to, once a week, maybe once a month. But definitely more frequent at the start, and depending on what you're working on, you may want to do more sessions.
Yeah.
I want to say this for people who aren't familiar with energy work, because this can sound kind of like, what are you talking about? A lot of times I explain it to people, it's kind of like acupuncture without needles. But also think about, again, just daily life, right? You have a lot on your mind, you have a lot that you have to do, you become stressed, and we carry that stress and this energy in our body. So maybe it manifests as you have sore back, sore neck, your stomach is upset, you have like all of these physical manifestations happen. And it is equivalent to if you had a water hose and you grab it and you create a kink in the hose and the water starts to back up in it, right? That's what happens to us. So when you come to have a Reiki session, it's as if you are slowly releasing that kink in the hose so that the water can start to flow again. So you're creating this allowing this flow of your own life force to start to move again through the spaces where it may have become congested, blocked, stuck, built up, all the stress, tension, on and on. Yeah, so it's a beautiful way of getting ourselves back in flow
so
with us.
It's safe to say that coming in for like one Reiki appointment, it's not going to be a quick fix. It's not like I came in for Reiki, so I'll never be stressed again.
No. And that's absolutely a quick fix. Like, so when people, and I'll say this, and I hope, if you're listening and you're thinking like, yeah, I have some stress and I need to work through some stuff, give yourself the time to really work through it. So if you come in for one session, yeah, you might leave and feel amazing. You might feel so good. But unless you've done something to maintain that for yourself, learn the other tools to support you in maintaining that flow for yourself,
absolutely,
it is just like a quick fix that you're going to revert back into whatever your old patterns, cycles, behaviors, and things were. You want to work yourself out of that. You want to come back into, again, that alignment that does take time. I mean, think about how long it took to build up all the stress and anxiety and whatever it was you've gone through. It's not going to just be fixed overnight. You could feel good. But if you want like some real results, you have to be willing to show up to really get in there and do the work.
And it's such a joy being able to provide mental health therapy and Reiki for that reason. And I'm starting to see a lot more Reiki practitioners offering like intuitive coaching and things like that. So I'm starting to feel like Reiki practitioners are seeing like clients may need a little bit more than just the Reiki session. They may need a little consult afterwards to say, okay,
Absolutely.
this was the experience of your session. What's kind of going on in your life right now? you know, to be able to provide a little dialogue after the session. So that's just something I picked up on, like, wow, a lot of practitioners are really doing more coaching and consulting and intuitive guidance and things like that, in combination with providing the Reiki.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I do on my sessions. I do provide intuitive coaching as well,
Mm-hmm.
but part of it is because it's again, like you're working on the different levels of how we process and store information. And
Mm-hmm.
it is very common when people receive a Reiki session, again, that energy starts moving. So what that means is not only does your life force start moving and you may feel better physically, more relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
but you may also have like repressed feelings and emotions start to
Yeah.
move as well. And when those things start to come to the surface, yeah, you don't want to just, tell someone, okay, bye, have a great
Yep.
day. Like, yeah, it's an important component to check in with people to see what did come up for them. How are they feeling? But it also, more importantly, brings them into the process of their own
Mm-hmm.
self-healing so that they
Mm-hmm.
can talk out whatever it was that they experienced. I think it's one of the most important parts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just again, when I think of Reiki, like, you are always the first person that comes to mind. You just have a very clear-cut way of describing Reiki and explaining energy, especially for people who may not be sure what it is and the terms and things like that. So I just thank you for your clarity on Reiki and on
Yeah.
energy. And I know you touched on your journey. So it seems like for you, the way you discovered Reiki is that it was recommended for you. And
Right.
instead of just hopping in and going to a Reiki session, you said, let me go and actually take a class. Let me take Reiki 1 and see what this thing is about. What about Reiki 1 like made you want to continue? Like, I'll do Reiki 2 now. I'll do, what made you want to
Yeah.
continue your journey?
Well, first I want to say this, it was so interesting to me
Uh-huh.
that I ended up studying with 7 or 8 teachers over the
Mm,
last, years. I started in 2010 and I'm glad I did. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But after taking Reiki level 1, because well, I guess I should back up and say this. There are different levels to it. So you can come for Reiki sessions, which is beautiful. But I
mm-hmm.
think if you come in for a session and it really connects with you, I recommend taking classes because then you can learn, again, the tools to really facilitate the self-healing for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Reiki level 1, it's a lot of focus on hands-on, physical, connecting with yourself, these types of
Mm-hmm.
things. And again, I thought that I knew myself. I thought I was connected to myself. I mean, why would I think otherwise? But after what you learn in level 1, especially the Reiki Gokai, the Reiki principles,
Mm-hmm.
all of these different elements and tools that you learn in Reiki level 1 really do, again, shine a light on you. Who
Yeah.
you are beneath your stories, beneath what anyone told you, who you are beneath the projections of the world, who you are beyond, your parents tried to mold you
Mm-hmm.
into be. You really do start to connect into recognizing, like, whoa, there's more to me than what I realized, and I have a lot of choice around how I
Mm-hmm.
show up in the world. So yeah, I mean, and then the cherry on top was feeling energy. I mean, it was
Yes.
like magic,
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, what is this that I'm feeling in my hands? What is this? What's going on? I could feel energy moving. It's crazy. So, honey, yeah, after level 1, I was all the way in. I was like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
need to see what else this Reiki stuff is about. Yeah.
Nice. That was the same for me. Went to Reiki 1 and I was like mind blown. Like,
Yeah.
what?
And I will say this too, because again, sometimes people think Reiki is just for, like, oh, I'm in pain. Like, no. And I have said a lot on my podcast that it's a way of life. And
Mm.
the reason I
Yes.
say that is because there, again, are different components to the practice that really point to how we can live in harmony with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and with each other. So aside from the hands-on, which a lot of people are familiar with, in level 1, you learn what I just mentioned, the Reiki Gokai or the Reiki principles. And they really can be looked at as like a code of ethics, like
Absolutely.
short little,
Yep.
lines that help you to really focus the mind and redirect
Mhm.
your attention to how you're showing up and how
Yep.
you're treating yourself and how you're treating other people. I mean, it's such a beautiful technique.
And I always tell my students, especially those who come for Reiki 2, I'm like, okay, Reiki 1, you learned, about Reiki and how to, like, quote unquote, do Reiki, right?
Yes.
But in level 2, now you're about to learn how to become Reiki. Like, you
Yeah.
are Reiki. Reiki is you. Like, this is a lifestyle. And I always tell people that are like, okay, I'm ready for level 2. I'm like, are you sure? Because this is a lifestyle. Like, there's no turning back after your level 2 attunement.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you
Yeah.
say? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I wasn't going to say anything. You just had me thinking and
Thinking,
yeah.
yeah. What would you say for the healer listening that maybe they're practicing some other energy techniques, or maybe somebody who was just like you and I, who was curious about it and wanted to learn more and just got wrapped in this whole Reiki thing? For somebody who wants to get started, like, where do they start? What would you recommend?
Yeah. So first, I would say one of the best things to do is find a teacher, but research the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
So what has happened is Reiki has become very popular. And now there are several different lineages of Reiki and different styles of Reiki and all of these things. So I think one of the best things you can do, first of all, is think of your own personal intention around it. Like, what is it you want to gain from this? What is it you want to learn? What do you want to understand? And then as you're looking for a teacher, you'll see if what they focus on is in alignment with what it is you want to do. And so
Yeah.
trust feeling some kind of resonance with who you find, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I always say you want to have a teacher who practices their practice
Oh,
because
no, seriously.
yeah,
Seriously.
yeah, because a lot of people, they may teach, but they are not necessarily practicing. And again, it's something that you can kind of get a sense of just from looking at their site, reading what they're about, or a lot of
Mm-hmm.
teachers, you can email them and they will gladly have like a mini phone call with you to talk
Yep.
about, whatever it is that you're looking for. I know that you're going to have a directory, so that's a great
Yes.
resource. And yeah, but definitely finding a teacher that you feel aligned with is a good start.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you get in and take a class, it really isn't going to matter unless you're also committed to practicing your practice. Okay.
Very.
Don't let it stay in the class. What you
Yolanda,
learn, take
you
it and
are
practice.
really hitting it on the head with that. I tell my students all the time,
Mhm.
once you leave this class, and with Reiki, it's not like if you don't use it, you lose it, but it's like if you don't use it, then you're not using it. Like,
Right.
you're not using it. And you mentioned for those wanting to look for a class and a teacher, to go out and research and find a teacher that matches. And I love to offer consultations because I'm curious to know who is signing up for my
Yeah.
training. What are
hmm
your intentions? Are you sure? How did you hear about Reiki? What do you already know? What is it that you want to learn? So I kind of do like a little vetting as
Yeah.
well, just to be sure, you're going into this with the right intentions versus, I don't know. I'm
Oh,
just
I
doing
had
it
a teacher who
because.
had a full-blown intake form. Like, she
Yeah.
interviewed you as her student. Real talk. Like, she was not
Mhm.
taking you if she didn't feel like you were aligned for her. She
Yeah.
wouldn't accept you as a student. But one of the things you just said reminded me of again, because I always have to remember not everyone is familiar with energy work, but
Mhm.
you think about all of these different practices in different cultures, right? Like,
Mhm.
we could look at yoga, and there's a lot of focus on the breath, prana, your life
Mhm.
force. You can look at
Mhm.
practices like martial arts, where a lot of people think it's about the fighting, but really the focus is on cultivating that life force and be able to intentionally direct that life force energy.
Mhm.
There are, Tai Chi, all of these practices from all of these cultures that focus on the cultivation and building of your life force. And then also having the discipline of a disciplined mind, managing your own mind, your emotion, your own will, which a lot of us are functioning from autopilot and don't even recognize it, right?
So true.
So when you come to a Reiki class and you get what's called an attunement, or some call it an initiation, it's like activating that light of remembrance within you, of like, oh, like that divine essence within all living things. But again, it's up to you to cultivate and nurture and start to embody that aspect of the self.
Absolutely.
So in a very basic way, I tell people to think of, you know, that depiction of like the angel and the devil on your shoulder. Like we all have the angel and the devil. That aspect of you, the angel part, that's like your higher consciousness, your higher awareness, your higher mind. You know what's right. You know what's the right thing to do, right? So many times we're aware of it, but we ignore it because we want to go with the devil on the shoulder. Because we are mad. We want, you know, our ego is screaming up and down, whatever it may be. So these practices help you to get more into alignment and harmonizing with that higher aspect of yourself. And that's what this is really about, like rediscovering that part of your nature, that divine essence of life, that goodness within you, and starting to live and function from that state of being. I mean, it's a practice. I mean, you know,
it is.
You got to keep trying, but.
And I imagine there are some people who learn Reiki and then just, I guess, never do anything with it. But why would you do that?
Well, but that's the thing, because think of the culture we live in, right? Everything's immediate. You could order on Amazon and it'll be on your doorstep by the morning, right? We want everything right now. And so when it comes to practices like this, a lot of people want to like push a button on the forehead and say like, oh, I'm enlightened, I'm better now. No, it goes back to the person that has one session. Yeah, it'll be a moment of like, whoa, that felt good. I feel right. I feel aligned. Okay, but how do you maintain it? You have to do the work to cultivate and maintain and practice for yourself. And you're the only one who can do it. So we have these beautiful techniques like Reiki that give us the tools and outline a structure to help us learn how to come back into our true state. This healthy, whole state of being.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
You and me both. So guys, if you are like, I love Reiki, or I want to learn more, please make sure you check out Yolanda's podcast, Reiki Radio. I mean, it is an amazing, amazing podcast. I told y'all that's probably like one of the few podcasts that I listen to because, you know, I'm a weirdo. You guys know that by now. Like listening to different stuff, just not your everyday stuff. And I just love the topics that you cover and the guests that you have on that share the many different ways that they are using Reiki. Like it can literally be used anywhere and everywhere. And the thing with energy, like you mentioned, you can have distant Reiki sessions.
Right.
For the busy Black women, I get a lot of those who just can't find the time to come in and lay down and have an appointment. And that's fine because they're able to engage in energy. In a distant session, because that's just how energy works. You don't even have to be physically present.
No. And the beauty is it really highlights our connection, that we really are not separate from each other. And, you know, this is the last thing I want to say. I told you at the beginning, I am so thankful that you've created this podcast. And I think it's so important. And it's one of the things when I started in this, I thought like, wow, I really want to bring this to my community because I didn't see a lot of it. And because of how powerful it really is and how healing it is in ways that you have to experience it to really understand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am so thankful to see that you are doing this in this way. And so again, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your insight and your perspective on Reiki. I thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Afro Chi podcast. Be sure to visit our website at afroqi.com and on all social media platforms at The Afro QI. Subscribe to this podcast now so you never miss a show.